the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians the revival of an ancient conflict recorded in the Bible?
The nation of Israel is a resurrected nation. What if there was going to be a resurrection of another people, an enemy people of Israel?
The Dragon's Prophecy, in theaters October 6th and 8th. Streaming and DVDs available October 9th. Get the film at thedragonsprophecyfilm.com.
Coming up, opening day for The Dragon's Prophecy. I'll tell you what that means to me. I'm also going to relate the film to Trump's peace plan for Gaza and some goings-on with Mr. Tucker Carlson. I'm also going to address the charge. I'm doing all of this for a Mossad paycheck of $7,000. Eric Metaxas, who's featured in the film, is going to join me. We're going to talk about Jesus, Jesus's Jewishness, and we're also going to talk about biblical archeology. Hey, if you're watching on X, Rumble, or YouTube, listening on Apple or Spotify, please subscribe to my channel. Hit the subscribe, the follow, the notifications button. I'd appreciate it. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
America needs this voice. The times are crazy. In a time of confusion, division, and lies, we need a brave voice of reason, understanding, and truth. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
Well, it's here, opening day of The Dragon's Prophecy, and having now been around this block making films 8 or 9 times, you have a certain sense of just nervous electricity about it. You've worked on a project, you finally try to do your best to make it as good as possible, and you pay attention to details. And there are many aspects to making a film. You have to do the legal work, and you have to create the LLC, and you have to raise investment money, and you have to go produce the film, and then you have to market it. And I think we've done all those things, and we've done them well. And now the film is kind of like our offering to the public. It's out there. It's in theaters tonight, again on Wednesday. And I'm just waiting to see how it's received. I put out an invitation on Twitter, on X this morning, just saying, hey, you know what? If you don't like Jews, if you don't like Israel, go see the movie. And genuinely, I want to hear from you. I want to get your honest feedback. Go with an open mind. Just watch, think, listen, and see if it helps you to maybe reformulate, rethink, re-examine. But if you love Israel, and if you believe that the Old Testament is joined to the New, both are legitimate parts of the Bible, the promises of God are not retracted or revoked, there's no abrogation, but rather there's continuity, there's fulfillment. Jesus is a Jew who fulfills the original covenant and thus creates a new one, which spiritually does replace, by the way, the old one. But it doesn't mean that the land promises of God to the Jews are thereby taken back. They can't be taken back because when you give something, any kind of a gift, you either give it or you don't. You either give it in perpetuity or not. Otherwise, it's not a gift. It's a conditional, I'm letting you have the use of it at my discretion. If you misbehave, I'm going to take it back. It was never yours to begin with. So can we as Christians say God never gave that land at all to Abraham and his descendants? Come on. That is strictly contradictory to what is in the Bible. Now, the film, back in theaters tonight on Wednesday, and I want you to see it if you can in the theater. Look, their theater is starting to fill up, so move quickly, get your tickets, and you can't go to the theaters and get them. I said this before, but still you have some people, well, Dinesh, I've looked on Fandango. You can't buy it on Fandango. The only place to buy tickets, the only place, is the website, The Dragons, plural, thedragonsprophecyfilm.com. Go there, enter your zip code. It will show you immediately the theaters playing near you. Buy your tickets, take your family, take people you know, go with your Bible study, go with your conservative group, Tell church members to meet you there. It's going to be great. There's nothing like watching this with like-minded conservatives and Christians in the theater. Those who have seen my earlier films know that they have a peculiar effect on people. It's not uncommon. It's, in fact, normal for the whole theater to stand up and wildly applaud at the end. That's because these films are made for that kind of cinematic experience with soaring music and unforgettable scenes. So see it in the theater if you possibly can. Now, we live at a time when some people can't, and so they want to watch at home, and that's fine. Starting Thursday, which is October 9th, the film becomes available on streaming. It's on multiple platforms, but I'll name the two main ones. Salem Now. Salem is our media partner for the film. You can go to salemnow.com. You can connect to Salem Now from the website. And it's also going to be heavily promoted on Rumble. So you can go on the Rumble platform. You can essentially do a pay-per-view. You just buy the streaming rights to the film, click, watch. So it's very exciting. And I'm not going to, in the end, tell you which way to see it. I would prefer you see it in the theater, but it's completely your call. By the way, you can order DVDs. I just brought my DVD in. I'm going to wave it a little bit later. Actually, Debbie, you're coming to show? Okay, pass it over here. Here's what it looks like. Super cool. And these DVDs, they're ready to go, and they will start landing in your mailbox. But you need to pre-order now so we can kind of get it out to you, and the DVDs will start making their way to you and start arriving on Thursday and beyond. Now, I was trending on Twitter this morning because of a post I did on Tucker Carlson. And I want to address this Tucker phenomenon a little more directly because, there are people I know and trust who said, don't get into it with Tucker. He has a big following. He's very mean-spirited. But let me tell you why I'm doing it and why I think it's actually important to do. Tucker has been sort of at this now for a long time. And as you know, I've essentially held my tongue, said nothing about it, partly because I kind of was sort of reluctant, right? Tucker and I did this speaking tour last year. I'm like, I don't want to do anything that is in any way going to like fracture MAGA. But then it occurred to me, he's doing that already. He's driving a wedge right in the middle of MAGA, and he's doing it more than anybody else. I mean, Candace is sort of Candace is basically like running her own freak show. I grant it's an interesting freak show. She's a very attractive person. She's got a sort of almost a mesmerizing insanity about her, and people are sort of transfixed. They're like, I mean, think about it. It's a little bit like, if you're driving on the street and you see 7 dogs all like prancing together in line on their hind legs. It's fascinating. You kind of want to pull over and watch. Debbie's warning me from the sidelines. Dinesh's analogies are running away with you. Well, all right. I think you get the point. With Candace, it's a little bit more of like a spectacle. And the other people are just too downright weird to have to even bring them up. But Tucker has this kind of, he's got this aw shucks, this pink cheeks, this kind of all-American manner. And as a result, a lot of people, not so much older people, because older people are a little wiser. They sort of see through this, the ventriloquist routine, the performance artistry, the projecting your views onto somebody else, asking leading questions, and then acting like major epiphanies are coming your way, even though you picked the guest because you know exactly what he's going to say. So this whole sort of shtick is very transparent to people who are kind of wise to the ways of the world. But a lot of young people, it's like, wow, and so they get blown away. And here, this is sort of most of what has drawn me into all this, is I begin to realize that if Sharia comes to America, it's not going to look like Osama bin Laden. It's going to look like Mamdani. It's going to look like Tucker. It's going to be advanced by people born in America who don't have much of an American accent, Mamdani. People who are pretty suave, people who know how to make social media videos, Mamdani. Or people on our own side. I mean, remember the scene in The Godfather where the Godfather goes, when the betrayal comes, it's going to be someone we really trust. That's where we are, guys. That's the truth of the matter. And I want to emphasize that how bad all of this is for MAGA. Forget about whether it's good or bad for Israel. It's obviously bad for Israel. Forget about whether it's in the national interest of the United States. I'm going to put that aside for a moment. I'm just going to focus on the impact of all this on MAGA. And this is the primary reason why I think it's important for me to speak out and call out people, even somewhat reluctantly, by name. Now, MAGA is on the march. We're making incredible progress. So let's start with this. In the Charlie Kirk case, it's very obvious that you have these sort of Antifa-related, trans-related violent networks that are plotting all sorts of mayhem. They go to training camps. They are apostles of violence. Some of them participate directly. Sometimes they have legal helpers. They have people who put up bail money for them. And in the case of the Charlie Kirk assassination, it appears to be a sort of a trans ring who at the very least seems to have known about it in advance. The shooter himself, the case seems strong from what I know. Namely, that you have this guy, you can see him approaching the venue. He's got evidently a rifle that is stuck in his pants. You can actually see him limping. You then have video of him running away. And they've got his fingerprints. They've evidently got his DNA. I'm getting all of this from the FBI itself. I've also read the charging documents. So it seems to me they've got a strong case. And just as we have not only a case, but a rationale for going after Antifa and going after these trans networks, along come people from our own side saying, nah, this is a put-up job. No, they got the wrong guy. This guy's a patsy. The real shooter was like a Mossad agent, or the real shooter is somehow Israel. Israel did it. All right, this is quite an astounding thing to say. Do you have any evidence for it? Do you have any video? Do you have any intercepted messages? Do you have any DNA? Do you have any footprints? Answer, no, 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 and no. We have nothing. We are just going to put the idea out there. And this is basically what I'm finding is the MO, not just of Tucker and of Candace, but their followers. Dinesh, you really must be getting $7,000. Debbie and I will talk a little bit more about this later this week, the $7,000 nonsense. But my point is, prove it. Forget the 7,000. Prove that Debbie and I have gotten a single penny from Israel. You can't do it. Why? Because we haven't. I think, as many of you know, we give money to biblical archaeology in Israel. We've been doing it since we first experienced all this in 2022. So we've been doing it for 3 years. We intend to continue. So to put it somewhat differently, we are not on Israel's payroll for a single shekel. If the truth is to be told, it's really the other way. Israel is kind of on our payroll, if you know what I mean. So stop with this nonsense. What I find remarkable is that people feel confident in apparently, if this is considered legit in their circles, to just make stuff up. And when I said to someone, I've made multiple movies. My movies have made tens of millions of dollars in the box office. You really think I'm going to sell out for $7,000? Then he goes, well, maybe you're getting $100 million. I'm like, prove it. Prove it. Because Debbie's like, wait, Dinesh, you've been holding out on me. Where's that $100 million? Do you have some secret bank accounts like in Qatar? Where are you storing this dough? I haven't heard a word about it. Oops, honey, I've been busted right here by, some whack job on X. Look, this stuff, look at it this way. Israel is fighting for its life against radical Islam. We don't do it that well. They're on the front lines doing it. You can argue, is it worth $3.8 billion? If you have a case, you want to say that we should give them no money, or we should give them $1 billion because that's all they're worth, then make that case. Argue it out. But the simple fact of the matter is to tear down Israel, to tear down the Jews, to legitimize this kind of oceanic anti-Semitism. Look, what are you doing? I mean, you're helping radical Islam. There's no other way to look at it, right? Here's another group you're helping, the radical left, the cultural left in this country. you're giving the shooter in the Charlie Kirk case an elegant defense. He comes and goes, there are many people who think that, well, you got my DNA and you got my footprints and you have the goods on me, but guess what? Candace Owens and all these other people say the Mossad did it. Can you prove the Mossad didn't? And so, maybe there's reasonable doubt right there. We are actually helping the worst people in the world. There is an alliance right now between, on the one hand, the cultural left in the West, and on the other hand, the radical Muslims. These two groups cannot exist in each other's world, but they are joined together by a mutual hate of who? Well, of Israel and of the Christians. And so, to undermine our relationship with Israel, to undercut Israel, is to fortify both the cultural left in this country and the radical Muslims. So these are the worst elements of the world. They have declared in their rhetoric of the little Satan and the big Satan, they know who their enemies are. So either we join up with the people who are fighting them, or this would be sort of like the Union Army in the middle of the Civil War, identifying some battalions that are particularly effective in taking on the Confederacy, and basically saying, let's cut off all ties to those people. Why are we providing ammunition to the, to Grant and Sherman? Well, the answer is because they're doing a really good job fighting the really bad guys who would finish us off if they could. That's what's at stake here. So, look, I'm not saying Tucker Carlson is paid by Qatar. I've never said that. I don't know it to be true. Unfortunately, this insinuation that people only think the way they are because they're getting paid, I mean, honestly, I'm a little tired of it. Tucker's very well off. I understand he's from a well-off family. He certainly has plenty of ways to make money. He's got a big following. He doesn't actually need the Qatari money. And I would be very shocked if he is doing it for that. So I'm staying away from all that nonsense. I'm merely pointing out not the motives, which I don't know, but what are the effects of all this. Let me come back to the film and say that the film, I'm happy to say, deals with these political issues, but it deals with it in a very kind of objective, thoughtful manner. I take, for example, Tucker Carlson's question to Ted Cruz, and I pose it to Netanyahu. I let Netanyahu answer it his way. And so the film begins in politics, but I have to say it doesn't end in politics. It ascends. And I think that's something we really need these days. People talked in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination about the need for restoration, for revival, for spiritual enlightenment. I do think that all of that is in this film. Debbie uses the phrase kind of God-led. And I do think that we have seen in the making of this, in our ability to go when Israel was mostly closed. I was reading a book about red heifers on the flight. I get to Israel, and almost amazingly, I run into a guy. This was completely unplanned, and he goes, "Want to see the red heifers?" I'm like, "What?" He goes, "The red heifers." I go, "The red heifers. The red heifers that are supposed to be part of temple sacrifices when the temple is rebuilt and the Al-Aqsa Mosque comes down." He goes, "Yeah, those red heifers." I go, "Where are they?" He goes, "Right over here, right over there." He points his finger. We had this kind of stuff happen to us multiple times during this film. It reminds me a little bit of some of the things Caviezel said about the making of The Passion of the Christ and how strange things were happening in the course of that film. The same has been true in a certain way with this film. I want you to go see it if you can in the theater. If not, sign up right now for the streaming. Order your DVDs. It's a great way to share the message. Hey, if you want to watch it first, make sure you love it, then buy DVDs, no problem. Do that. The website, the one-stop shop for tickets, theater tickets, and everything else, thedragonsprophecyfilm.com. I can't wait to hear what you think about this film. When I first came to America around 1980, I had $500 in my pocket. Now, if I had been frugal and not spent a penny of that money, what would it be worth? What could it actually buy now compared to what it could buy in 1980? Answer, less than $130. Why is that? Because the US government, through the Fed, is constantly printing money. When the government prints money, there's more money chasing the same amount of goods and services. So money goes down in value. Money buys less and less. Now, the Fed has been at it since 1913. That's why a dollar today can only buy what a few cents could buy in 1913. And the government continues to print oceans of money. It never stops. An ounce of gold reached a high of $850 in 1980. Now it's worth around $3,900 an ounce. So historically, over time, gold has gone up and up in value, and dollars have gone down and down. And what about in the last 12 months? Gold is up over 40%. I believe now is the time to find out how you can diversify your savings with gold and silver. That's why I've partnered with Goldco. They offer the best customer service for precious metals ownership. They are also the only gold dealer that offers a first-time gold buyer rebate of up to 10% in bonus silver on qualified purchases. There's no better offer out there. To learn more about how to safeguard your savings from the dollar's decline, visit dineshgold.com. Easy to remember, dineshgold.com. My wife Debbie has been using Relief Band for over 20 years. She gets nausea on plane and boat rides, and this is the only anti-nausea wristband that helps her enjoy this type of travel. Relief Band is the original anti-nausea wristband that quickly relieves and effectively prevents nausea and vomiting associated with motion sickness, anxiety, migraines, hangovers, morning sickness, chemotherapy, and so much more. Relief Band is legitimately a band you wear on your wrist to give you relief from nausea, and you can change the intensity depending on how you are feeling to make it stronger or weaker. It's 100% drug-free, non-drowsy, works quickly before or after symptoms start, and has zero side effects. Plus, Relief Band's new Premier Plus model provides advanced nausea relief, includes a digital clock, and utilizes smart skin sensing technology to preserve battery life. When we were in Australia last year, we went on a yacht ride. Debbie used her Relief Band, and she was able to eat and sightsee, all the things she loves to do on land but had never been able to do on a boat. And if you ever see us on a flight, just ask Debbie, show you her wrist, and there it is, Relief Band. So if you want to cure your nausea problem fast, join the hundreds of thousands of people who are nausea-free with Relief Band. Right now, we've got an exclusive offer just for Dinesh D'Souza Show viewers and listeners. Go to reliefband.com, use promo code Dinesh. You get 20% off plus free shipping. So head to reliefband, reliefband.com. Use our promo code Dinesh, 20% off plus free shipping. Guys, I am just delighted to welcome back to the podcast somebody who is a good friend and a true delight to have. It's always fun to be around him. It's always fun to talk either in person or like now on the show. It's Eric Metaxas. The website, ericmetaxas.com. Eric is a New York Times, a #1 New York Times bestselling author. His spectacular book, Bonhoeffer, but then a procession of others, Miracles, If You Can Keep It, the acclaimed Letter to the American Church, which is now a documentary film, and also a book that deals with biblical archaeology that I highly recommend. In fact, it is directly referenced in the Dragon's Prophecy. It's Is Atheism Dead? Evidently, it's also going to be a streaming TV series. Eric, thank you for joining me. It's always great to have you. I want to talk a little bit about biblical archaeology and also our conversation about that in the Dragon's Prophecy. But let's start by talking about this debate that seems to be swirling around social media over replacement theology. Now, you're more of a theologian than I am, but I just want to give my own kind of summary of what I think the replacement theology, at least this camp, is saying, and have you react to it. What they seem to be saying is that when Jesus came, the old order was replaced. The New Testament was replaced by the New. The Old Covenant was replaced by the New. The Jews have acted badly and sort of forfeited any promises that God made to them. This has all now been taken over by the Christians, which means that we are now indifferent to Judaism. We just view it as another false religion. We need to leave all of that behind, let alone thinking that any of the Old Testament passages about blessing Israel are even remotely relevant today. So I think I'm giving a pretty fair summary of what I think these people are saying.
Yeah.
I just want you, as someone who has thought deeply about Christianity, thought deeply about what it means, to comment on this.
Well, thank you. It's let's at least say dismaying that we're having this cultural conversation at this point. When I was born again, when I had my Jesus experience in 1988, one of the givens, when you accept Jesus, when you become a full-blown Christian, I don't know what I was before then. I was some kind of a Christian, but something happened to me and I'm all in. And I realized to love Jesus, because we're not simply called to have an intellectual assent to some theological doctrines. No, we're supposed to have a personal relationship with God himself, who is a person, capital P, and who designed us to have a relationship with him. So it's deeper than just some intellectual assent to some theology. And when I came to faith in this way, the people around me, the people who were my elders in the faith, made me understand that for some reason, we who love Jesus have a love for Israel. Now, as with anything else, words are words, and then you have to think, what does that mean? Can I say what that means exactly? Well, on some basic level, and this is why I think my Bonhoeffer book speaks to this, if people want to see how Bonhoeffer dealt with that. But you realize that to be a person of God, to be called into relationship with God, is somehow, according to Romans, according to St. Paul, who was Jewish, is to be grafted in to Israel. Now, again, what does that mean? You'll never be able to satisfy some people with the explanation of what that means, because there's a mystery there. But the point is that we who are Christians are somehow grafted in to the tree. So the original tree is Israel, but through the new covenant, we're grafted in. We become a part of that. Now, again, there's a mystery there. We know as Christians that Jesus is the Jewish Messiah. It says in the scripture, he came first for the Jew, then for the Greek, which is to say those who are Gentiles. And there's a paradox there, because I know that my faith is in Jesus, but I also know that he was a Jew. He did not abolish. This is very important. He did not abolish the old covenant. The new covenant does not abolish the old covenant. It is the fulfillment of the old covenant. And so again, there's a mystery there. But one thing I knew when I came to faith as a Christian, believing in the Jewish Jesus as Messiah, was that God calls us to love Israel. And I think there are so many passages in the scripture that talk about the Jews coming back to Israel, to the land. What can that possibly mean? It's a fascinating concept, because we know that the diaspora happened 70 AD. They're chased away from the homeland where they have been for well over 1,000 years. And there's this prophecy, many, many prophecies, that they will return. And so it seems obvious to me and most serious Christians that this is what happened in 1948, when the Jews come from everywhere back to the land where all these things happened. It's a fulfillment of prophecy. Now, again, you could say, well, what does that mean exactly? Well, we may not know exactly, but we know the basics. We know that out of one of the worst things in the history of the world, the Holocaust, comes the ability for the Jews to return to their homeland. So you would think, on the simplest level, we would be cheering them on. We would be blessing them. We would be grateful that God returned them to the land because he had always promised this. And so the idea that people would postulate that this has no meaning, that Israel is no more interesting than Liechtenstein or Belgium or any other country, seems ridiculous if you're a student of the Bible and if you love the God of the Bible. So even if you can't give every jot and tittle of what this means, the basics are there. We're called to love the people of God. And we know one of the ways that I know the Jews are God's chosen people is the hatred, the irrational hatred for them. You don't see an irrational hatred of any other group. There's something there, which to me as a negative shows the positive, shows that God's hand is on the people of Israel. And again, the details are details. You can talk forever about it. But the idea that they're people somehow who have an animus against Israel, or somehow, let's face it, Dinesh, who want to blame the Jews for anything, for crucifying Jesus. This is ridiculous. I mean, it's almost shocking in this day and age that people would return to these ancient hatreds, to these ancient lies. I mean, if anybody listening thinks that he is a Christian, the number one thing you know as a Christian is that I and my sins put Jesus on the cross. If you want to blame someone else for putting Jesus on the cross, you do not understand the basics of the Christian faith and are probably not a saved Christian, and that should frighten you.
Eric, let me say it kind of my way, what you've been saying, because I think it's so fundamental. I want to recapitulate it slightly. And I would put it this way, that even though that God did not come into the world as a kind of abstract being, he came into the world and he engaged with the world through history. And it is a mystery, why did God choose the Jews? Remember Hilaire Belloc's little verse, how odd of God to choose the Jews? Okay, it's really odd, I grant. But nevertheless, if we accept the truth of Christianity, we believe that's how God did it. He came he essentially began his covenant with Jews, and then one of them, named Jesus, becomes the Messiah. And I also think it's interesting that if you look at the Bible as a sort of biography of God, if you want to put it that way, God the Father, the first person of the Trinity, is predominant in the Old Testament. And in fact, it's predominant in such a palpable way that like Adam and Eve can like talk to him. Abraham and Moses seem to interact with him with a directness that even the later prophets don't have. They may see God in dreams, but they don't talk to God back and forth and argue and bargain with him the way, say, Abraham did. And then the New Testament is sort of the biography of Jesus, and then the Acts of the Apostles, the biography of the Holy Spirit. So isn't in some ways what these so-called replacement theologians, what they're basically saying is, let's cut out God the Father. His day is done. Let's just keep Jesus and the Spirit. The three persons of the Trinity is like down to two. And this to me is, this is not some internecine reasonable debate about theology. This is like rank heresy. It's completely nuts. It is out of bounds of what any Christian denomination has believed from the very beginning. And this is something that should be absolutely shunned. Do you agree?
I agree wholeheartedly, Dinesh. And let's think of this for a moment. The thing disproves itself every time you turn around. To whom did Jesus talk? To his Father in heaven. Jesus, the Jew, he didn't say, oh, I'm the first Christian. He said, I'm the Jewish Messiah. I'm the fulfillment that the Jews have looked to this day. I am the fulfillment. I am the Jewish Messiah. And I speak to my Father, Abba, Father in heaven. He shows us how to do it. When they said, hey, Jesus, how do we pray? Our Father who art in heaven. It is a very, very abbreviated, reductive view of things to wipe all that away. And you really have to be ignorant. You have to be an ideologue to ignore Christian history, to misunderstand these things. And so, yes, it is absolutely shocking that we're living in a day where we have to reassert the basics. And again, if you want to see who has done this before, the Nazis did this before. The Nazis tried to take the Judaism out of the Christian faith. That is an insanity. There is, without the Jewishness of the Christian faith, there is no Christian faith. The Christian faith is a Jewish faith. Jesus came, think of this, God sent his Messiah into the world. Why? To get the whole world to worship the God of the Jews, so that we all become Jewish by faith in the Messiah, the Jewish Messiah. So we're supposed to, in a sense, all become deeply Jewish. We are part of the new Israel. So the idea that we reject Israel or that Israel is irrelevant, again, there are always going to be people who quibble, and we can talk about the details, but the fundamentals are there. These are God's people. He loves his people. And even if they turn away from him, he loves them all the more. They're his children. He wants to woo them back. And I think anybody who loves Jesus knows this and loves the Jewish people and prays for the Jewish people, and stands with the Jewish people. And on a particular and on a simply secular view, who doesn't know? If you don't even believe in God or anything, you just see Israel, this small nation that has been attacked and attacked and attacked by bloodthirsty people who genuinely want to wipe it off the face of the map. For whom would you be rooting in that? A group of people that believe in democracy, that have religious liberty, and then you have these surrounding nations that want to destroy it. I mean, even on just the most human level, it seems clear with whom we should side.
I mean, I also think, Eric, switching here a little bit to the strategic and the political and a kind of secular language, you do have people here, and you hear them today, Megyn Kelly's one of them, but others, they're like, Israel needs to wrap it up, enough, So I say to myself, all right, Israel has about 25 million people. We are more than 10 times as big. They lost 1,000 people on October 7th. Let's just multiply by 10. This would be like somebody coming into the United States, going into neighborhoods and massacring people, and we lose 10,000 people, 3 times as many as on September 11th. Now, would these same MAGA tough guys who are all for butt kicking and show them and let's teach them a lesson and America first, if that were to happen inside of America, would they be saying, let's wrap it up, Trump, don't retaliate, even though you're aiming at military targets, you're killing too many civilians, stop with all that nonsense. In fact, we are the bad guys. We are the bad guys for responding to an unprovoked. I mean, to me, it is so inconceivable that these same people would be taking that position that we kind of start approaching, and I'm very reluctant always to use the anti-Semitism label, but when you are clearly judging Israel and the Jews by a standard you would never apply to anyone else, I think we're entitled to say there's something a little wrong with your motives here, right?
I can make no sense of it, Dinesh. I can make no sense of it. When I think of the horror, now you have to understand, there are always people who are going to believe insane things. And so they believe that, oh yeah, all that stuff that happened, well, it didn't really happen. That's just Jewish propaganda. That's what Goebbels said. Anytime any information was put out that was inconvenient to his narrative, he'd say, oh, it's Jewish propaganda. And there will always be people who will believe that lie. And that's what we're dealing with. We have to soldier on amidst the madness and the actual propaganda that says that's propaganda. And we have to say, what does common sense say? Common sense says, if you come into my country and you do these wicked things, and then you take hostages and you don't give the hostages back, do you not know that we're going to do everything we can possibly do to get these people back? And to prevent you ever doing this again? That's simple common sense. You don't need to be a Christian. You don't need to be an American. This is simple common sense. When you do this to my family and to families that I know and to my neighbors, this is the most natural reaction. So, when people like Megyn Kelly cavalierly say, well, it's time to wrap it up, Hamas and they could have wrapped it up from day one by turning over the hostages. Why haven't they done that? Because they don't want to wrap it up. So it seems to me the onus is on them to wrap it up, and they have made it very clear they don't want to wrap it up. So it's very strange to me that people like Megyn Kelly would say that. I cannot imagine where she's coming from.
Yeah, in fact, a moment ago, I even understated my point, because the number of Jews in Israel is actually closer to 10 million. Not 25 million. I was actually describing the number of Jews worldwide, including all the Jews in the United States. So my case is actually much, much stronger. Let's pivot, Eric, a little bit to a topic that is the centerpiece of your book, Is Atheism Dead? We have a beautiful conversation, the two of us, in the movie about this. We're not systematically covering it, but our conversation is actually the roadmap. All the things you mentioned in our conversation, all the places like the birthplace of Jesus, we then physically went to all those places, so we could it's all embedded inside your conversation in the film. It turns out beautifully. You're going to love it. But talk a little bit about the significance of this archaeology in general and why it's so important that it's happening today. It seems to be providing, you could almost call it secular ratification or authentication of the historicity of the Bible.
That's exactly right, and that's perfectly well put, because we're living in a time now, and we have to be clear, 100 years ago, you couldn't say this. And there are two things that I put in the book Is Atheism Dead? The first is that science is now today pointing to a creator God in a way that has absolutely never been happening. It is a new thing, and it's astonishing. And the second part of the book, which we talk about in the film, is it's the same thing happened with archaeology. In the last 100 or so years, biblical archaeology is unveiling things that are staggering. It proves with stones, with evidence, actual evidence, that the Bible is history. So those people who 100 years ago or 50 years ago wanted to dismiss the Bible as a bunch of folktales, you say, well, excuse me, what about this? What about this? What about this? Every time we turn around, and this has been happening for decades and decades, the excavations in the Middle East are revealing the Bible to be history. I mean, 150 years ago, this was not conceivable. The Bible existed by itself. There was no correlation to anything outside of itself. Suddenly now we find things in the archaeological record that prove that what the Bible is saying has reality to it. We are living in very, very exciting times. This is coming out more and more and more. I have to say that it's going to become nearly impossible for people not to believe the Bible is history as the days pass. And the only hope for somebody who doesn't want to believe the Bible is history is, not to read my book, to ignore your movie, to look away. Because once you see what you and I have seen, you say, ladies and gentlemen, it's an open and shut case. If you're intellectually honest, you understand that God is now allowing us to see through archaeology, which didn't exist 150 years ago, that the Bible is actually history. So it's very challenging to a secular worldview.
I mean, the reason this makes me chuckle, Eric, is because when you and I were in college, you went to Yale, I went to Dartmouth. If we had gone to religion class, we would have been exposed to these so-called biblical higher critics. And these are guys who for 150 years would sit in their kind of armchair and they would read the Bible and go, well, we actually think that the Bible was written by 4 different people and we're going to give them all different names. And through kind of surgical analysis of the text, we're going to proclaim that all of this was composed hundreds of years after the fact.
Right.
And therefore much of it is either embellished or made up altogether. And what you're saying is that now people have actually gotten out of the armchair. They've gone into the archaeological pit. They're pulling out clay seals and stone inscriptions. By the way, many of them written by the enemies of the Jews, by people who conquer Israel, saying things like, I just won a great victory against the house of David. And suddenly the house of David, which was previously in the Bible, but only in the Bible, springs to life, jumps into history, and becomes utterly undeniable, embarrassing 100 years of idiot scholarship that basically said that David was a mythical character, kind of like King Arthur.
Well, that's exactly right. And it's happening over and over and over. And this is why I was thrilled to be a part of your film, because I want to get the word out. I want the whole world to know. And I want especially Christians to know that this evidence, it didn't used to exist. I mean, 50 years ago, it would have been tough. But it's for some reason, God has chosen now to reveal these things through science, through archaeology. And it's going to be gigantically challenging to the secularists. The evidence it's simply become overwhelming.
Awesome stuff, guys. We're delighted to have Eric in this film. He's a big addition to it. I've been talking to Eric Metaxas, his website, ericmetaxas.com. Follow him on X at Eric Metaxas. Check out the book, Is Atheism Dead? Eric, what a pleasure to have you. Thank you for joining me.
Always my pleasure. Thanks, Dinesh.
When I flip a container around, I can't pronounce it or recognize the ingredients. I just put it back. But you check out these containers. This is balance of nature, fruits and veggies in a capsule. You're going to find these containers in a shelf in my home. Why? Because every single ingredient is a fruit or veggie plucked straight from the soil. No binders, no additives, no artificial colors, no fillers, just whole fruits and veggies, gluten-free and vegan-friendly. These harvested ingredients are freeze-dried into a fine powder using an advanced vacuum cold process to better preserve nutritional value. I can say with total confidence, I'm getting 31 ingredients from fruits and veggies. Very good for you. And hey, if you don't like taking pills, no problem. Open your fruit and veggie supplements, mix the powder into a smoothie, sprinkle it over your food. Done. Join me in taking balance of nature every day. Use my discount code AMERICA. You get 35% off, free shipping, and plus for a limited time, a free bottle of fiber and spice. This is fiber and spice, good stuff. But you got to use my discount code AMERICA. You got to order online. Go to balanceofnature.com. When you use the discount code, 35% off, plus a free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com. MyPillow is excited to announce they're having their biggest 3-in-1 sale ever with a limited edition product, a back-in-stock special, and a closeout deal you won't find anywhere else. Now, MyPillow bed sheets, only $29.88. Any color, any style, any size, even kings. Regular price, $119.98. Now just $29.88, but once they're gone for good. My towels, finally back in stock, but not for long. Get a 6-piece My Towel set. Regular price, $69.98. Now only $39.98. And for the first and only time, get their limited edition premium My Pillows made with Giza cotton and a designer gusset, queen size, $17.98. Kings, only $19.98. Also for a limited time, when you order over $100, you get free shipping plus $100 in free digital gifts. So go to mypillow.com or you can call 800-876-0227. That's 800-876-0227. Use promo code Dinesh. You get the best offers ever. Quantities are low, so order now. Once again, go to mypillow.com and use the promo code DINESH Dinesh. You know, I thought about sort of suspending my discussion of life after death just because I'm in the throes of the Trump peace plan and the movie and skirmishes with Tucker Carlson and all of it. But I'm not going to. I'm going to kind of keep it going. Why? Because I think it's important for us to keep a certain type of serene balance. And we are plunged in the timely, but we also want to keep our eye on the timeless. This is the idea of subspecie eternitatis from the point of view of eternity. And by the way, the film incorporates all that. So the film itself is timely and timeless. But that being said, this issue of life after death is perennially relevant to people. Our sojourn on the earth is brief. It is truly a pilgrimage, right? That's why the idea of the Pilgrim's Progress, Chaucer's great work, captures more than the actual pilgrimage he's describing. So here we go. This chapter 2, which is called Vendors of Unbelief. These are the people who are promoting unbelief, promoting atheism, promoting a certain type of skepticism that turns out not to be true skepticism at all, because it's one-way skepticism. It is skeptical of belief in God, but it's not skeptical about skepticism itself. We'll come back to that. I start with a quotation from Shakespeare: "Death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns." So here's Shakespeare very evocatively. Death, it's undiscovered. Why? Because it's not that you can't go there. You can, but if you do, how are you going to come back? So as a result, an impassable gulf appears to exist between this life and the next, if there is a next one. And this is the gulf we are going to strenuously attempt to bridge or to cross. Let's begin. On July 7, 1776, the writer James Boswell visited philosopher David Hume as Hume lay close to death. Now, Boswell is the great biographer. He wrote an absolutely mesmerizing biography of Samuel Johnson. It's called Boswell's Life of Johnson. Very long book. If you read it, you want to read it in small pieces, but it is full of moments that are not only laugh out loud funny, because Johnson is truly one of the funniest people of all time, but it is also such a vivid picture of Johnson that upon reading it, I realized I actually know this guy. I kind of know Boswell, but I really know Johnson. If Johnson were to actually walk into a restaurant where I was eating dinner with Debbie and some friends, I would recognize him. That's how good this book is, and very few biographies can even come close to doing that. Now, Boswell was one of these guys who loved to be around great men. He crossed the English Channel to go meet Rousseau. Boswell, when he heard that David Hume was on his deathbed, Boswell basically decided, I'm going to head over there. Why? Because Boswell basically goes, David Hume is an atheist. He keeps talking about the fact that there's no life after death, and he claims to be undisturbed by it. But Boswell goes, but can he really be undisturbed by it? Let me go find out. Let me go and kind of watch him as he's dying to see if he like freaks out and starts like calling on God and demanding that a priest come to see him and he repents of his sins. Let's see if he has a deathbed conversion. And Boswell goes to visit Hume, and then he notices that Hume does not have a deathbed conversion. Boswell writes that Hume was, quote, placid and even cheerful unto the end. And Adam Smith, by the way, who is also a friend of Hume, noted that he talked to Hume shortly before Hume's death, and he says Hume was kind of making jokes about death, and he basically told Death, this is Hume talking, I need a little more time. I'm like in the middle of finishing a manuscript, so hey, Death, can you like hold off a little bit? I'm just trying to like get a few more paragraphs in. And Death replies and basically says to Hume, you are a loitering rogue. You should have done all this work earlier. Your time has come, like get in the boat. So get in the boat is a classical reference to the famous ancient Greek boatsman named Charon, who would steer people into Hades, into the afterlife after death. Get in the boat. And so Boswell is kind of unnerved by this, because he's like, how can a person who doesn't know what is coming after death be so cool and so confident as they approach the end? Well, this issue of the deathbed conversion has come up more recently in the context of Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, all of whom seem to be sort of obsessed with this idea that they say as atheists, they are not going to do deathbed conversions. They seem to almost realize like, geez, this might happen to me, or perhaps more tellingly, they have the view that somehow Christian propagandists are going to go say we converted on our deathbed. We want to tell you in advance that it's fake news, that we're not going to do that. So you don't believe it even if you hear about it. This is Dawkins. He goes, I might want to have someone videotape my death. Frankly, nobody cares. But his view is that so he thinks his death is so important that it needs to be videotaped in order to later refute rumors that he somehow converted on his death. But Daniel Dennett went in for a 9-hour operation. This is now a few years ago. He says the doctors told him this might be fatal. And Dennett says, yeah, this was actually a harrowing experience. And Dennett even admitted it tested his atheism. But he says, nevertheless, he wrote an essay called Thank Goodness, not Thank God, but Thank Goodness. What he's getting at is he emerged intact. And he says not only that, but his atheism did not give in. He held on to it firmly. And he also said, I want to thank not God, but the medical community. They're the ones who saved me. God didn't have anything to do with it. Now, perusing all this, what interests me is the kind of psychology of all these people, of Hume, Dawkins, Dennett, all of them, even Hitchens. These are atheists who are trying to assure us that they're going to approach their own death with equanimity. They don't really need to bother about life after death because they don't think there is one. In fact, they know there isn't. And it is this kind of assurance, this kind of certainty that gives them a certain type of aplomb. They're not going to be shaken. They're not going to give in and surrender. They're not even going to be possessed of any kind of haunting doubts to the very end. Now, why not? Why not? What do these atheists know that we don't? And how did they come to know it? This is the question I want to leave you with today. Think about an atheist who goes, there's no life after death, and you're now posing to them a question, what makes you so sure?
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or watch on Rumble, YouTube, and SalemNow.com.